The sleek elevator doors parted with a soft ding, revealing the bustling lobby of Apex Industries. At precisely 8:45 a.m., a man in an ill-fitting polyester uniform shuffled out, his eyes darting nervously as he approached the front desk. To the casual observer, he was just another new hire starting his first day. But behind the cheap glasses and graying wig was Marcus Thompson, the 42-year-old CEO of this very company. For weeks, Marcus had meticulously planned this undercover operation. He fabricated an entire identity as Mike Rogers, complete with a backstory and forged resume, all to infiltrate his own company incognito as a lowly receptionist. Why would a powerful executive go to such lengths? The answer was simple. Marcus needed to know the unfiltered truth about how Apex Industries really operated. Sure, the quarterly reports looked good on paper. Employee satisfaction surveys came back mostly positive, but something didn't sit right with Marcus. In his gut, he sensed a disconnect between the polished facade presented in the boardroom and the day-to-day reality for his staff. And he was determined to bridge that gap, no matter how unconventional the method. As Mike settled in behind the reception desk, his hands trembled slightly while logging into the computer system. A steady stream of employees flowed past, barely sparing him a glance. Marcus took a deep breath, reminding himself to stay in character. He practiced for hours with a voice coach to soften his authoritative tone into something more befitting an entry-level worker. "Good morning, Apex Industries. How may I direct your call?" Marcus recited the greeting for what felt like the 100th time that morning. 4 hours into his shift, and he was already developing a newfound respect for the mental stamina required to man the front lines of customer service. But it wasn't just the monotony of the job that was eye-opening. It was the snippets of conversation he overheard, the body language he observed, the general atmosphere of the office. Like when Sarah from accounting rushed past, muttering about another late night ahead thanks to the new expense reporting system, or the hushed argument between two managers about unrealistic sales targets. During his lunch break, Marcus found himself in the crowded break room, surrounded by employees venting their frustrations. He listened intently as they griped about outdated equipment, confusing communication from upper management, and a pervasive feeling that their concerns fell on deaf ears. "I swear, sometimes I think the bigwigs upstairs have no clue what it's actually like down here in the trenches," complained one IT technician, eliciting nods of agreement from the group. Marcus felt a pang of guilt. Had he really become so out of touch? He'd always prided himself on being an approachable leader, but clearly there was a vast gulf between his perception and reality. As the day wore on, Marcus found himself fielding an endless barrage of calls, complaints, and inquiries. He struggled to navigate the labyrinthine phone system and database, acutely aware of the impatient sighs from those waiting in line. By mid-afternoon, his temples throbbed, and he longed for the plush comfort of his corner office. But just as he was about to call it quits, a young woman approached the desk. Her eyes were red-rimmed, and she clutched a crumpled tissue in her hand. "I'm so sorry to bother you," she began hesitantly. "I know you're not HR, but I don't know who else to talk to. I'm having some issues with my direct supervisor, and I'm scared to report it officially." Marcus felt his heart rate quicken. This was exactly the kind of situation he'd hoped to uncover. "I'm happy to listen," he said gently, gesturing for her to continue. What followed was a harrowing account of workplace harassment and intimidation that left Marcus reeling. How could this be happening right under his nose? As the woman poured out her story, Marcus fought to maintain his composure, all while his mind raced with the implications. Just then, a commotion near the elevators caught everyone's attention. A group of executives emerged, laughing boisterously as they headed out for an early happy hour. Marcus recognized his own COO among them, a man he'd long considered a close friend and ally. "Must be nice," muttered someone nearby. "While the rest of us are drowning in work, they're off to sip martinis on the company dime." The contrast was jarring. In that moment, Marcus felt the full weight of his responsibility as CEO. He'd started this undercover experiment on a whim, never expecting to unearth such deep-seated issues. Now he realized he held the power to enact real change, but only if he had the courage to act on what he'd learned. As the day drew to a close, Marcus bid farewell to his unsuspecting coworkers. He stepped out into the crisp evening air, his mind swirling with everything he'd witnessed. The fake mustache itched, a constant reminder of the deception he'd undertaken. But he couldn't shake the feeling that this might be the most important day of his entire career. Tomorrow, Marcus Thompson would return to his position as CEO, but he would do so as a changed man, armed with a newfound understanding of the challenges faced by his employees. The question now was, what would he do with this knowledge? As he climbed into his waiting car, Marcus knew one thing for certain: life at Apex Industries was about to change dramatically. And it all started with one CEO's decision to step out of his comfort zone and into the shoes of those he led. The next morning, Marcus arrived at Apex Industries well before sunrise. He sat in his parked car, staring at the imposing glass facade of the building he called his professional home for over a decade. The weight of yesterday's revelations pressed heavily on his shoulders. As he entered the lobby, Marcus nodded to the actual receptionist, a friendly woman named Linda who'd worked there for years. He felt a twinge of guilt, realizing he'd never truly appreciated her role until now. "Good morning, Linda," he said warmly. "How are you doing today?" Linda looked momentarily stunned by the personal greeting from the CEO. I'm fine, thank you, Mr. Thompson," she stammered, clearly caught off guard. Marcus made a mental note to make a habit of these small interactions. It was just one of many changes he knew he needed to implement. In his office, Marcus canceled his usual morning meetings. Instead, he pored over employee files, vacation requests, and departmental budgets with fresh eyes. The numbers and policies he once viewed as mere data now took on new meaning. He thought of Sarah from accounting, wondering how many late nights she'd endured because of inefficient systems he'd approved without a second thought. A knock at the door interrupted his musings. It was Jack, his TOO, and longtime friend. "Hey boss, missed you at the club last night," Jack said casually, dropping into a chair. "The boys were wondering where you disappeared to." Marcus studied Jack's face, recalling the dismissive attitude he'd witnessed yesterday. Had his friend always been so disconnected from the rest of the staff, or had Marcus simply been blind to it? "Jack," Marcus began slowly, "I think we need to have a serious conversation about the state of our company." Jack's eyebrows shot up. "What do you mean? The quarterly projections look great. We're on track to exceed last year's profits by at least 15%. Marcus shook his head. "I'm not talking about profits. I'm talking about our people, our culture. I've been hearing things, troubling things." For the next hour, Marcus outlined his concerns, carefully omitting the details of his undercover stint. Jack listened with growing unease, his usual bravado fading. "Look, Marcus," Jack said finally, "every company has its share of complainers. You can't make everyone happy all the time. That's just business." Marcus felt a flicker of disappointment. This was the attitude he'd feared, the same complacency he'd been guilty of himself. "I disagree, Jack. We can do better. We have to do better." As Jack left, looking unsettled, Marcus turned his attention to a more pressing matter. He picked up the phone and dialed HR. "This is Marcus Thompson. I need to speak with you immediately about a sensitive issue." An hour later, Marcus sat across from Elena, the head of human resources. He just finished relaying the young woman's story of harassment, his voice tight with controlled anger. Elena looked pale. "Mr. Thompson, I had no idea. We've never received any formal complaints about this supervisor." "And that's exactly the problem," Marcus said firmly. "Our employees don't feel safe coming forward. We need to change that starting now." As they discussed potential solutions, Marcus felt a mix of determination and trepidation. He knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. Changing company culture never was, but he was committed to seeing it through, no matter the cost. The rest of the day passed in a whirlwind of meetings and phone calls. Marcus spoke with department heads, pored over employee feedback surveys, and began drafting the company-wide memo. With each conversation, he felt the enormity of the task ahead growing. As evening fell, Marcus found himself once again in the lobby. The day shift was ending, and he watched as tired employees streamed out, some looking defeated, others simply resigned. He thought of the vibrant, innovative company he'd always imagined Apex to be. The disconnect between that vision and reality was stark. Just then, he spotted a familiar face, the young woman who'd confided in Mike about her harassment situation. She was huddled near the elevators with a group of coworkers, all speaking in hushed tones. As Marcus approached, he caught snippets of their conversation. "I'm telling you, something weird is going on," one man was saying. "My manager was actually asking for our input on the new project today, like genuinely listening." "Yeah, and did you see? They fixed the broken coffee machine in the break room," another chimed in. "It's been busted for months." The young woman nodded, looking both hopeful and wary. "I don't know what's happening, but I overheard Elena from HR talking about some big changes coming. Do you think?" She trailed off as she noticed Marcus standing nearby. The group fell silent, eyeing him nervously. Marcus offered a small smile, trying to appear approachable despite the obvious tension. "Good evening, everyone," he said. "I hope you all had a productive day. I just wanted to let you know that I appreciate your hard work, and I'm looking forward to some exciting developments here at Apex." As he walked away, Marcus could hear the whispered speculation resume behind him. He knew it would take time to rebuild trust, to prove that his words weren't just empty promises. But it was a start. Back in his office, Marcus slumped into his chair, exhausted but oddly energized. He pulled out a notepad and began jotting down ideas. Town hall meetings, anonymous feedback channels, management training programs. The list grew longer with each passing minute. A ping from his computer interrupted his brainstorming. It was an email from the board of directors, requesting an urgent meeting to discuss the company's direction. Marcus grimaced, knowing that not everyone would be on board with the changes he envisioned. Some would resist, clinging to the status quo that had made them rich and comfortable. As he drafted his response, Marcus glanced at a framed photo on his desk. It showed him at the grand opening of Apex Industries, young and idealistic, flanked by smiling employees. He promised them then that Apex would be different, a company that valued its people as much as its profits. Somewhere along the way, he'd lost sight of that promise. But now, thanks to an eye-opening day as Mike, he had a chance to make it right. The path forward wouldn't be easy, but Marcus was ready for the challenge. He looked out his window at the city skyline, the lights of countless offices twinkling in the darkness. In each of those buildings, he knew, there were employees facing similar struggles. Maybe, just maybe, the changes at Apex could spark a wider transformation. As he gathered his things to leave, Marcus paused at his door. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, difficult conversations, and likely some pushback. But for the first time in years, he felt truly excited about the future of his company. With a deep breath, Marcus switched off the lights and stepped into the hallway. The real work was just beginning. The next few weeks at Apex Industries were a whirlwind of activity. Marcus threw himself into the task of reforming the company culture with a fervor that surprised even his closest associates. He instituted an open-door policy, encouraging employees at all levels to share their concerns and ideas directly with him. The initial trickle of hesitant visitors soon became a steady stream. One morning, as Marcus was reviewing the latest batch of anonymous feedback submissions, his assistant poked her head in. "Mr. Thompson, the board members are here for the meeting." Marcus took a deep breath, steeling himself for what he knew would be a challenging conversation. As he entered the boardroom, he could feel the tension crackling in the air. The faces around the table ranged from curious to openly hostile. "Gentlemen," Marcus began, "I know you're concerned about the recent changes at Apex. I understand that change can be uncomfortable, but I'd assure you, it's necessary for our long-term success." Harold Winters, the eldest board member, leaned forward with a scowl. "Necessary. Our profits are up. Our stock is soaring. Why rock the boat now?" For the next hour, Marcus laid out his vision for a more equitable, transparent Apex Industries. He spoke of increased employee satisfaction leading to higher productivity, of ethical practices attracting top talent and conscious consumers. But with each point, you could see the skepticism growing. "This isn't a charity, Marcus," snapped Roger Dalton, another board member. "We have a responsibility to our shareholders. These feel-good initiatives of yours are going to tank our bottom line." As the meeting adjourned, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that he just painted a target on his back. He knew that without the board's support, his position as CEO could be in jeopardy. But the memory of his day as Mike steeled his resolve. He couldn't go back to the way things were, no matter the personal cost. Meanwhile, on the company's main floor, whispers of change were spreading like wildfire. In the marketing department, Zhou Chen was still in shock after her latest team meeting. For the first time in her 3 years at Apex, her manager had actually listened to her ideas, even praising her initiative. "I'm telling you, Ethan, it was bizarre," Zoe said to her colleague over lunch. "It's like someone flipped a switch. Suddenly, we're all valued team members instead of replaceable cogs." Ethan nodded, a mix of hope and skepticism on his face. "Yeah, I heard they're reviewing the parental leave policy too. But how long will it last? I've seen companies try this rah-rah team spirit stuff before. It always fizzles out once the quarterly numbers dip." As they spoke, neither noticed Jack, the COO, lingering nearby, his expression darkening with each overheard word. In the HR department, Elena was working late again, but for once, she didn't mind the extra hours. She was knee-deep in revamping the company's harassment reporting procedures, determined to create a system that employees could trust. A soft knock on her door startled her. It was Amy, the young woman who'd first reported her harassment to Mike at the reception desk. "I just wanted to say thank you," Amy said softly. "I don't know what changed, but I finally feel like someone's listening, like maybe things can get better." Elena smiled, feeling a mix of pride and lingering guilt. "We're trying, Amy. It's going to take time, but we're committed to making Apex a safe place for everyone." As Amy left, Elena's phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "Emergency meeting tomorrow a.m. Board pushing back hard. Need your support." Elena's heart sank. She knew this fight was far from over. Across town, in a dimly lit bar, Jack nursed a whiskey, his mind churning. He'd always seen Marcus as a brother, not just a boss. But lately, it felt like Marcus was slipping away, buying into some pie-in-the-sky idealism that threatened everything they built. "Another round, Jack?" The bartender's voice jolted him from his thoughts. "Yeah, Tony, keep 'em coming." As the bartender poured, Jack made a decision. If Marcus wouldn't see reason, maybe it was time for new leadership at Apex. For the good of the company, of course. Back at Apex, the night cleaning crew moved through the darkened offices. Maria, who'd worked there for over a decade, paused as she passed Marcus's office. The light was still on, and through the glass, she could see the CEO hunched over his desk, poring over documents. Maria remembered how, just last week, Marcus had stopped to ask about her family, even offering to help with her son's college applications. It was the first time in years any executive had spoken to her like a person, not just part of the furniture. Quietly, Maria knocked and entered with a fresh cup of coffee. "Thought you might need this, Mr. Thompson," she said softly. Marcus looked up, surprised and grateful. "Thank you, Maria, and please call me Marcus." As Maria left, Marcus turned back to his work with renewed determination. He knew the road ahead would be tough, but moments like this reminded him why it was worth fighting for. Outside, the city hummed with late-night energy. In offices and homes across the metropolis, Apex employees pondered the changes brewing at their workplace. Some dared to hope for a brighter future, while others feared the uncertainty that change would bring. And in the heart of it all, one man's decision to step into another's shoes had set in motion a chain of events that would either transform Apex Industries from the inside out or tear it apart at the seams. The coming days would determine which path the company, and all those whose lives were intertwined with it, would take. As a new day dawned, the stage was set for a showdown that would shake the future of Apex Industries and perhaps, in its own small way, the very nature of corporate America itself. The following weeks at Apex Industries were charged with an electric tension. Rumors swirled through every department, from the C-suite to the mailroom. Employees gathered in hushed clusters, debating the future of the company and their own job security. Marcus threw himself into his reform efforts with renewed vigor, knowing that time was not on his side. He organized town halls, personally visited different departments, and worked tirelessly to implement new policies. But with each step forward, he could feel the invisible pressure mounting against him. One rainy Tuesday morning, Marcus arrived at the office earlier than usual. As he stepped off the elevator, he nearly collided with Jack, who was emerging from the direction of the server room. "Jack, what are you doing here so early?" Marcus asked, unable to keep the suspicion from his voice. Jack's smile seemed forced. "Oh, you know me. Early bird and all that. Just checking on some reports." As Jack hurried away, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong. He made a mental note to speak with it about tightening security protocols. Meanwhile, in the HR department, Elena was putting the finishing touches on the new employee feedback system when her computer suddenly crashed. Frustrated, she called the help desk. "Sorry, ma'am," the technician said after some investigation. "Looks like someone accessed your files remotely last night. We're still assessing the damage." Elena felt a chill run down her spine. The files contained sensitive information about ongoing investigations, including Amy's harassment case. If that information got into the wrong hands. Across the building, Zoe from marketing was in the middle of a presentation when her manager interrupted. "Sorry, Zoe, we're going to have to put your project on hold. Orders from up top." Zoe blinked in surprise. "But Mr. Thompson himself approved this initiative last week. He said it was exactly the kind of innovative thinking Apex needs." Her manager shrugged helplessly. "Things change fast around here lately. Best not to rock the boat, you know?" As word spread of projects being cancelled and reforms being quietly rolled back, a sense of unease settled over the company. Employees who had dared to hope now found themselves questioning everything. In the cafeteria, Ethan overheard a conversation between two executives he didn't recognize. "It's all set," one was saying in a low voice. "The board meeting next week will be the nail in Thompson's coffin." Ethan's heart raced. He had to warn Marcus somehow, but would anyone believe a low-level employee like him? As the week progressed, Marcus found himself increasingly isolated. Allies grew scarce, meetings were cancelled at the last minute, and even his assistant seemed to be keeping secrets. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched, his every move scrutinized. Late one night, as Marcus was preparing to leave the office, he received an anonymous email. "Check the financial reports from last quarter. Not everything is as it seems." Intrigued and alarmed, Marcus dug into the files. As he pored over the numbers, a disturbing pattern began to emerge. There were discrepancies, clever accounting tricks that painted a much rosier picture of Apex's finances than reality warranted. If this information got out, the fallout would be catastrophic. Just then, a shadow fell across his desk. Marcus looked up to find Jack standing in the doorway, his face unreadable. "Find anything interesting?" Jack asked, his tone casual but with an undercurrent of menace. Marcus's mind raced. How much did Jack know? Was he involved in the cover-up? And more importantly, who else was implicated? "Jack, we need to talk," Marcus said slowly, trying to keep his voice steady. "There's something very wrong here, and I think you know what it is." Jack's expression hardened. "You're in over your head, Marcus. Always have been. It's time to face facts. Your little social experiment is over. The board meeting tomorrow, that's when we set things right." As Jack turned to leave, he paused. "For your own good, Marcus, I suggest you start packing up your office. Don't make this any harder than it needs to be." The door closed with a soft click, leaving Marcus alone with the damning financial reports and the weight of realization. This wasn't just about his reforms or a clash of corporate cultures. There was something rotten at the very core of Apex Industries, and he had unwittingly stumbled into the middle of it. Marcus glanced at the photo on his desk, the one from Apex's early days. The faces of his employees, hopeful, trusting, stared back at him. He thought of Amy, of Zoe, of all the others who had begun to believe in the possibility of change. With grim determination, Marcus reached for his phone. There were calls to make, evidence to gather. The board meeting tomorrow wouldn't just determine his fate as CEO, it would decide the very soul of the company he had built. As the first light of dawn broke over the city, Marcus steeled himself for the battle ahead. He had started this journey by stepping into another's shoes. Now, he would have to stand firmly in his own, not just for himself, but for every employee who had dared to hope for something better. The stage was set for a showdown that would shake Apex Industries to its very foundations. As employees began to trickle into the office, blissfully unaware of the storm about to break, Marcus took a deep breath. In just a few hours, everything would change. The only question was, who would be left standing when the dust settled? The Apex Industries boardroom buzzed with tension as executives and board members filed in. Marcus stood at the head of the table, his face a mask of calm determination that belied the storm raging within. As the last person took their seat, he noticed an unexpected addition. Vanessa Reeves, a ruthless corporate lawyer known for orchestrating hostile takeovers. Marcus cleared his throat, ready to present his findings on the financial discrepancies. The boardroom door burst open. Alana from HR rushed in, breathless and disheveled. "I'm sorry to interrupt," she gasped, "but there's something you all need to see." All eyes turned to the large screen on the wall as Elena plugged in a flash drive. Suddenly, security camera footage filled the display. The room fell silent as they watched Jack and several board members in a series of clandestine meetings, exchanging documents and engaging in hushed conversations. "This is from the past month," Elena explained. "There's more emails, recorded phone calls. They've been planning this for weeks." The atmosphere in the room shifted palpably. Jack's face drained of color as accusations flew. Marcus seized the moment to present the evidence of financial manipulation he'd uncovered. As the truth unraveled, it became clear that the corruption ran deeper than anyone had imagined. But just as Marcus thought he'd regained control, Vanessa Reeves stood up with a predatory smile. "Gentlemen, ladies, while this is all very interesting, I'm afraid it's irrelevant. You see, as of 9 a.m. this morning, Apex Industries is under new management." She slid a document across the table. "Globex Corporation has acquired a controlling interest in your company. Mr. Thompson, your services as CEO will no longer be required." The room erupted into chaos. Board members shouted, accusations flew, and in the midst of it all, Marcus felt the ground shifting beneath his feet. Everything he worked for, everything he fought to change, was slipping away. Just then, his phone buzzed with a text. It was from Zoe in marketing. "Mr. Thompson, you need to see what's happening outside. Now." Confused, Marcus strode to the window and drew back the blinds. His jaw dropped at the sight below. Hundreds of Apex employees had gathered in the plaza outside the building. They held signs reading "Save Apex" and "We Stand with Thompson." The crowd stretched as far as he could see. As he watched, Marcus saw Ethan from it step forward with a megaphone. "We know what's going on up there." Ethan's voice boomed. "And we're not going to let our company be stolen from us." The crowd roared its approval. Marcus felt a surge of emotion as he realized the true impact of the changes he'd started. These weren't just employees. They were people who believed in a better way of doing business. Back in the boardroom, the mood had shifted once again. Board members whispered urgently, eyeing the crowd outside with growing concern. Vanessa Reeves looked less sure of herself, her victorious smirk fading. Marcus turned back to the room, a new fire in his eyes. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice cutting through the din, "I think we need to reconsider our options." He gestured to the window. "Those people out there, they're the heart of Apex Industries. Not balance sheets, not stock prices, people. And they're telling us loud and clear what kind of company they want to work for." Jack, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, suddenly stood up. "He's right," he said, his voice hollow. I lost sight of what really matters. Marcus, I'm sorry. I was wrong." The admission sent another ripple of shock through the room. Marcus nodded at his old friend, seeing the genuine remorse in his eyes. There would be time to address Jack's actions later, but for now, they had bigger problems to solve. Vanessa Reeves, sensing the tide turning against her, tried to regain control. "This is all very touching, but the fact remains that Globex now owns a controlling share of Apex. Your feelings don't change the legal reality." Marcus smiled for the first time that day. "Actually, Ms. Reeves, I think you'll find that's not entirely accurate." He nodded to Elena, who distributed a new set of documents. "You see," Marcus continued, "when I realized what was happening, I made a few calls of my own. Those shares Globex acquired, they came from a holding company that, as of this morning, is majority owned by an employee trust. In other words, the people of Apex Industries now effectively own themselves." The room erupted once again, this time in a mixture of disbelief, outrage, and, from some corners, grudging admiration. Vanessa Reeves snatched up the documents, her face contorting as she realized the trap she walked into. As the implications sank in, Marcus turned back to the window. The crowd outside had grown even larger, with news vans now pulling up to the curb. He knew that what happened next would determine not just the future of Apex Industries, but potentially set a new standard for corporate governance. Marcus took a deep breath, straightened his tie, and headed for the door. It was time to address his people, not as a CEO, but as a partner in building something truly revolutionary. As he stepped into the elevator, Marcus couldn't help but marvel at the journey that had brought him here. It had all started with one day behind a reception desk, seeing his company through fresh eyes. Now, he was on the verge of transforming not just Apex, but perhaps the very nature of what a corporation could be. The elevator doors opened, and Marcus strode across the lobby. As he pushed open the front doors and stepped out to face the crowd, he knew that the real work and the real story was only just beginning. As Marcus stepped out onto the plaza, a hush fell over the crowd. Hundreds of faces turned toward him, a sea of hope and apprehension. He took a deep breath, acutely aware that his next words would shape the future of Apex Industries and everyone gathered before him. "My fellow Apex employees," Marcus began, his voice carrying across the silent crowd, "today marks a turning point in our company's history. For too long, we've lost sight of what truly matters, the people who make Apex great. That ends now." A murmur rippled through the assembled workers as Marcus recounted the events of the morning, the attempted takeover, the uncovered corruption, and the last-minute maneuver that had put ownership of the company in the hands of its employees. "But this is just the beginning," Marcus continued, his voice growing stronger. "We have a chance to redefine what a corporation can be. A chance to prove that profit and ethics aren't mutually exclusive, that a company can thrive by putting its people first." As Marcus spoke, laying out his vision for a new Apex, he noticed movement at the edge of the crowd. Vanessa Reeves was pushing her way through, flanked by a team of lawyers. Her face was a mask of cold determination. "This is all very inspirational, Mr. Thompson," Reeves called out, her voice dripping with sarcasm, "but I'm afraid you're forgetting one crucial detail." She held up a document, the fine print of your employee trust. It requires a majority vote to enact any major changes, and I doubt your workforce is ready for such a radical shift. A ripple of uncertainty passed through the crowd. Marcus felt a moment of panic. Had he come this far only to be outmaneuvered at the last moment? But then, a voice called out from the crowd. It was Amy, the young woman who had first reported her harassment to Mike at the reception desk. "I vote yes," she shouted. "I vote for change." Another voice joined in, Ethan from it. "Me too. I believe in Marcus's vision." Suddenly, the plaza was alive with voices, hands raised in the air. "Yes," they called. "We vote yes." Vanessa Reeves's smug expression faltered as she watched the sea of hands rise. But she wasn't done yet. "This isn't a proper vote," she protested. "We need time, proper procedures." Her words were cut off by a new commotion at the building's entrance. Jack emerged, looking haggard but determined. He strode up to Marcus and faced the crowd. "I've made mistakes," Jack said, his voice hoarse with emotion. "I lost sight of what Apex could be. But Marcus never did." He turned to his old friend. "I vote yes, and I'm prepared to face the consequences of my actions." The admission sent a shockwave through the gathering. Marcus nodded at Jack, a silent acknowledgement passing between them. There would be time later to address the past. For now, they had a future to build. As the impromptu vote continued, with an overwhelming majority in favor of Marcus's plan, Vanessa Reeves and her team retreated, their carefully laid plans in tatters. Marcus raised his hands, calling for quiet. "Thank you all for your trust," he said. "But this new chapter of Apex isn't about me. It's about all of us, working together to create something extraordinary." He paused, looking out at the sea of faces, faces filled with hope, determination, and a newfound sense of ownership. From this day forward, Marcus declared, every major decision at Apex will be put to a vote. We'll have employee representatives on the board, profit sharing for all, and a commitment to ethical practices that will set a new standard in the business world. The crowd erupted in cheers, the sound echoing off the surrounding buildings. As Marcus stood there, overwhelmed by the response, he felt a tug at his sleeve. It was Maria, the night cleaner who had brought him coffee during his late-night vigil. "Mr. Thompson, Marcus," she said, her eyes shining, "I just wanted to say, thank you for seeing us. All of us." Marcus smiled, remembering the day that had started it all, his undercover stint as a receptionist. "No, Maria," he replied softly. "Thank you for reminding me what really matters." As the celebration continued around them, Marcus knew that the road ahead wouldn't be easy. Transforming a company was hard work, and there would be challenges they couldn't even anticipate yet. But looking at the faces of his colleagues, no, his partners, he felt a surge of confidence. Just then, a commotion near the back of the crowd caught his attention. A group of people was pushing forward, led by a face Marcus recognized from business magazines and tech blogs. It was William Chen, CEO of rival tech giant Nexacorp. Chen approached Marcus, a mixture of admiration and calculation in his eyes. "Thompson," he said, extending his hand, "I have to hand it to you. This is unprecedented." He glanced around at the energized crowd. "I have a proposition for you, a partnership. Together, we could reshape the entire industry." Marcus felt the weight of the moment. Chen's offer was tempting, a chance to expand his vision beyond just Apex. But as he looked at the expectant faces around him, he remembered the lessons of the past weeks. With a smile, Marcus shook Chen's hand. "Thank you, William, but I think we'll reshape the industry just fine on our own." In fact, he raised his voice, addressing the crowd once more. "I think it's time for our first official vote as the new Apex. What do you all say? Should we partner with Nexacorp?" The resounding no that echoed across the plaza was all the answer anyone needed. Chen retreated, looking both frustrated and intrigued, as Marcus turned back to his people. "All right then," Marcus said, a new energy in his voice. "Let's get to work. We have a company to rebuild, together." As the crowd began to disperse, buzzing with excitement about the future, Marcus took a moment to reflect. From his day as an undercover boss to this moment of triumph, the journey had been unpredictable, challenging, and ultimately transformative, not just for him, but for everyone at Apex. He knew that this was just the beginning. The real work of creating a truly ethical, employee-driven company lay ahead. But for the first time in a long time, Marcus felt genuinely excited about the future of Apex Industries. As he walked back into the building, surrounded by smiling faces and words of encouragement, Marcus couldn't help but smile. Sometimes, he mused, the most powerful changes start with the simplest of actions, like spending a day in someone else's shoes. In the weeks that followed the dramatic Plaza Showdown, Apex Industries underwent a transformation unlike anything the corporate world had ever seen. The company's headquarters buzzed with a new energy as employees, now part owners, threw themselves into reimagining every aspect of their work. Marcus, true to his word, established a system of collaborative decision-making. Town halls became a regular occurrence, with lively debates on everything from product development to corporate social responsibility. The boardroom, once a bastion of closed-door deals, now hosted rotating employee representatives who brought fresh perspectives to high-level discussions. One morning, as Marcus walked through the office, he overheard a conversation that made him smile. Two interns were excitedly discussing a sustainability initiative they proposed, and that had been greenlit by their department. "I can't believe they actually listened to us," one was saying. "At my last internship, I was lucky if anyone remembered my name." "That's the Apex difference," her colleague replied with pride. "Here, everyone has a voice. The change wasn't just internal. As word spread of Apex's revolutionary new structure, the company found itself in the spotlight. Business schools clamored to create case studies, while other corporations watched warily, wondering if this new model was a flash in the pan or the future of business. Apex's stock price, which had initially dipped amid the uncertainty, began a steady climb as investors recognized the benefits of a highly motivated, invested workforce. Product quality improved, customer satisfaction soared, and suddenly, Apex was being hailed as an innovator not just in technology, but in corporate governance. Of course, not everything was smooth sailing. The transition had its share of challenges. Some longtime executives, uncomfortable with the new power dynamics, chose to leave. There were heated debates about profit allocation and growth strategies, but each hurdle was met with open communication and collaborative problem-solving. Jack, true to his word, faced the consequences of his actions. After a company-wide vote, it was decided that he would step down from his COO position, but be given the opportunity to earn back trust in a lower-level role. It was a testament to the new Apex culture, one of accountability, but also of second chances. 6 months after the Plaza vote, Marcus found himself back in the reception area, a sense of déjà vu washing over him. But this time, instead of a ill-fitting uniform, he wore his usual suit. And instead of a wig and fake mustache, he sported a genuine smile. "Good morning, Mr. Thompson," chirped the receptionist, a bright-eyed college student named Tyler. "Here for your shift?" Marcus nodded. "Indeed I am, Tyler, and please, it's Marcus." This was another new Apex initiative. Every executive, including the CEO, spent 1 day a month working in a frontline position. It kept leadership connected to the day-to-day realities of the business and gave every employee a chance to interact directly with upper management. As Marcus settled in behind the desk, he reflected on how much had changed. The lobby itself looked different, warmer, more welcoming. The stark corporate artwork had been replaced by pieces created by employees' children, adding splashes of color and personality. Throughout the day, Marcus greeted visitors, answered phones, and chatted with employees as they passed through. Each interaction reinforced his belief in the path they'd chosen. During his lunch break, Marcus headed to the cafeteria, now a bright, open space with healthier food options suggested by the staff. He grabbed a salad and joined a table where Zoe from marketing was sitting with Alana from HR and Ethan from it. "Mind if I join you?" Marcus asked, still somewhat self-conscious about intruding on employee spaces. "Please do," Zoe said warmly. "We were just discussing the community outreach program. Want to weigh in?" As they chatted, Marcus marveled at how natural it felt. The invisible barriers that had once separated management from staff had truly crumbled. After lunch, as Marcus was directing a visitor to the elevators, he noticed Amy, the young woman whose harassment report had been a catalyst for change, leading a training session in a nearby conference room. The sign on the door read, "Creating a Respectful Workplace, Peer-to-Peer Workshop." Catching his eye, Amy gave him a thumbs up through the glass. Marcus returned the gesture, feeling a surge of pride. This was the apex he had always dreamed of building. As his reception shift wound down, Marcus had one last visitor, William Chen, the CEO of Nexacorp, who had tried to propose a partnership on the day of the Plaza vote. "I have to hand it to you, Thompson," Chen said, shaking his head in amazement as he glanced around the transformed lobby. "I thought you were crazy, but this is impressive." Marcus smiled. "Thank you, William, but I can't take the credit. This is the result of unleashing the collective potential of our entire workforce." Chen nodded thoughtfully. "I've been watching Apex closely these past months. I'll be honest, some of my board members are pressuring me to adopt similar policies. They're worried we'll lose our competitive edge if we don't." "It's not about copying a formula," Marcus advised. "It's about fundamentally rethinking the relationship between a company and its people. If you're serious about change, start by really listening to your employees. You might be surprised by what you learn." After Chen left, Marcus finished up his shift, thanking Tyler for showing him the ropes. As he walked through the office toward the elevator, he was struck by the sounds of laughter, lively discussion, and the general hum of engaged, purposeful work. In his office, Marcus found a stack of reports waiting for him, the latest financial projections, employee satisfaction surveys, and product development updates. The numbers told a clear story. Apex wasn't just surviving under its new model, it was thriving. Just then, there was a knock at his door. It was Maria, the night cleaner who had shown him kindness during his undercover stint. Marcus," she said with a smile, "I hope I'm not interrupting. I just wanted to let you know. I'm starting classes next week. The new Education Assistance Program. I'm going to study business management." Marcus beamed. "Maria, that's wonderful news. Congratulations." After she left, Marcus sat back in his chair, feeling a profound sense of fulfillment. This was what success really looked like. Not just profits and market share, but lives changed, potential unlocked, a community uplifted. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the Apex building, Marcus stood at his window, looking out at the city. He thought about the journey that had brought him here, from a well-meaning but disconnected CEO to a true partner in building something revolutionary. It had all started with 1 day behind a reception desk, seeing his company through fresh eyes. That simple act of stepping into another's shoes had set off a chain reaction that transformed not just Apex, but perhaps the very idea of what a corporation could be. Marcus knew that the work was far from over. There would always be new challenges, new opportunities to live up to their ideals. But as he watched the Apex employees streaming out of the building, heads held high, animated conversations about tomorrow's projects, he felt a deep sense of optimism. In the end, Marcus reflected, the greatest undercover boss story wasn't about a CEO discovering problems in his company. It was about an entire company uncovering its true potential, the power of unity, respect, and shared purpose. As he gathered his things to head home, Marcus paused at his desk. The photo from Apex's early days still sat there, a reminder of where they'd started, but now, next to it, stood a new frame. Inside was a simple reception desk name tag that read Mike. Marcus smiled, picked up his bag, and switched off the office light. Tomorrow was another day in this grand experiment called Apex Industries, and he couldn't wait to see what they would build together next.